You're listening to Dodge Movie Podcast. Your hosts are Christy and Mike Dodge, the founders of Dodge Media Productions. We produce films and podcasts, so this is a podcast about films. Join them as they share their passion for filmmaking.
All right, everyone, welcome back to Dodge Movie Podcast. Strap in. It is going to be a controversial episode today. You wouldn't think so with a film like 27 Dresses, but wow, there was a lot of pauses and we talked about a lot of stuff.
I have more writing notes for this film than any film we've talked about yet.
Yeah, it's a 3-pager for notes for me for this one. All right, this movie came out in 2008. It was directed by Anne Fletcher, written by Aline Brosh McKenna, stars Katherine Heigl, James Marsden, Judy Greer, Kristen Ritter, Melora Hardin, Malin Ackerman, and Ed Burns.
Fun fact, the writer McKenna also went on to co-create and write Crazy Ex-Girlfriend.
Oh, I see a little bit of it.
Yeah, I think you can see that.
Mm-hmm. The synopsis for this film is: after serving as a bridesmaid 27 times, a young woman wrestles with the idea of standing by her sister's side as her sister marries the man she's secretly in love with. And the tagline is, she's about to find the perfect fit. Mike, what's the pickup line?
Pickup line is, Mozart found his calling at age 5, composing his first minuet.
I don't even remember what was happening.
She was a little girl in the wedding. And so that's then sets up that weddings are what music was to Mozart. Weddings are to Jane.
That's right. That's right. So in the opening scene, it just kicks us into high gear. We see her going from multiple weddings as Marsden starts kind of watching her.
Yeah, there's a confused male gaze at 4 minutes in.
Yeah.
Which I did not recall from the first number of times, N-1 times I've seen this film.
You saw it, yeah.
Yeah.
And it's obviously that always the bridesmaid, never the bride. And she's just obsessively caretaking of all of these women. And it's a comedic scene because she goes from an Indian wedding to a traditional wedding. And so watching her, I didn't understand. She basically hails a cab and says $300 for the night. And she bounces back and forth between the two weddings. And to me, I feel like you would just go to one for the first half and then go to the other for the second. But I guess maybe you couldn't if you were in the wedding.
Yeah, it also might be a little bit of Secret of My Success style comic hijinks. So maybe buy the premise, buy the bit.
Good call. Good call. Marsden plays a newspaper writer for the column that kind of features weddings. So that's why he's at both. Is he at both?
He's just at the one wedding.
Right. The Caucasian wedding, we could say. So he sees her, and then Judy Greer shares some exposition by stating that she has a crush on her boss, and she's concerned that if Jane doesn't stop taking care of everyone else, like who's going to take care of Jane, kind of.
And there's this big arc for Jane's character to learn to say no.
Yes. And they set up early, I think even before we see her and her sister, and it's clear that their mother died when they were both quite young. Her sister is played by Malin Ackerman. And after her mom dies, she kind of takes that mothering role.
Which is probably normal, but you also see that she was able to help out in that original wedding when she was younger. I don't believe we see the mother, so I think at that point we're supposed to think this is fairly soon after the mother's death. So again, it makes sense for that character to kind of imprint on weddings.
Mm-hmm. And kind of she finds her purpose, I think.
Sure, yeah, it definitely becomes her purpose, right? Maybe not her only purpose in life, but definitely she's very good at it. The weird thing to me was I was never quite sure if she's a wedding planner or just a professional bridesmaid.
You mean after watching it or before?
Even after watching it.
Oh, no, she's just a bridesmaid.
Right. But then why is she in so many weddings? Anyway, I'm thinking about it perhaps a little bit too much in detail.
You're overthinking it. I think it just sets up that she's the best friend of everybody. And she's so dependable that everybody just kind of has her there because they can always count on her. Because sometimes you can't always count on your friends to do.
Right. I get that as the person tapped to drive the grandparents around because I was the only dependable driver.
Right. You're the go-to. Yeah.
I kind of am.
Yeah.
I wanted to be more the Judy Greer character, but I guess I was more the Katherine Heigl character.
Yeah. So enter Malin Ackerman, and this is where it's going to get dicey.
A little contentious.
Yeah. So there were lots of pause counts happening because Much like in Wedding Crashers, where Mike did not like Bradley Cooper's character, he is starting to realize that not only did he dislike Tess, Malin Ackerman's character in this film, he's starting to hate her.
Yes, I feel sorry for the actor because I think she probably did a great job capturing a horrible character, Tess. And what I don't remember is the first time I saw this film, and I have seen this many times, is whether I hated her immediately because, spoiler alert, later in the film, she cuts up their mother's wedding dress and basically uses almost none of it. And I have a visceral reaction to that. And I think I hate that Tess character, more than Hannibal Lecter or Darth Vader, right? I mean, I hate that character. And unfortunately, I think the actor gets painted with the same brush, right? To be honest, I'm sorry. I don't know her. I'm sure she's a pleasant person and probably a talented actor and everything, but I just have such a problem with that.
Well, and this is where we paused a lot because I said, can we really blame Tess? Because she was brought up the younger sister. Her older sister took care of everything. Daddy doted on both of them. And she's beautiful. So why wouldn't the C's part wherever Tess went? And one would come to expect that kind of treatment. And so is it really her fault that she's lived this charmed life that, yeah, we all hate her, but is it her fault? She's not really being like, a troll.
So there's a line near the end of the film when Jane says, "Why would you want to be me when you get to be you?" Earlier in the film, there's a line where they're walking in the park and Tess says, "I don't know why. Oh, wait, I do."
Yes,
so
that's right.
To answer your question, yes, the character, you're a grown-ass woman. You know what's going on. You can change your behavior. So yes, she can be held accountable for that. Not when she's 10, but when you're 20 or 30, yes, you're an adult. Behave better.
Yeah, you're just getting a glimpse of what happened on our couch the night we watched this.
Yeah, like I said, have a very visceral reaction.
Yeah, and I'd love to chat with Malin and see what her process was. Was she aware the audiences might not like Tess and that, she's going to rub them the wrong way? I do think that they were kind of painting it a little bit because with the wedding dress, her getting up the wedding dress. Oh, and the scene where she's going to take Jane to where they're going to have the wedding. And she's like, look, there it is. And Jane says, the boathouse? And that's where her parents got married. And that's where Jane wanted to get married.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that Tess does know what she's doing because she kind of swooped in on her sister's wedding plans.
Yeah. So at that point in Ackerman's career, was she okay just to get the part, right? Because, very few actors have so much work that they can pick and choose to a certain degree, right? But I also think, is it possible that other viewers don't have quite the reaction that I do to that character?
I would be curious. You guys, please tell us.
Yeah.
Because I think this movie is pretty well known, and you guys have all watched this. I would love to know if you guys had the same reaction to Tess's character.
I really would, because it's possible that it's just me. I mean, I'm still right, of course, but it's possible that others don't share that rightness with me.
Because... yeah, I'm probably way overthinking it. But to a certain degree, isn't Jane responsible for being, the doormat?
Yes,
she needs
absolutely.
to stand up. And so she's just as, what's the word?
Complicit?
Yeah.
Yeah, I would agree. Jane is also responsible for being a doormat. And we see her throughout the film. That's her arc. She has to learn to say no. There's a great scene where Kevin, the writer played by Marsden, bets her to say no in a bar. That's very explicitly her character's arc.
Yeah, that's her.
And she has to grow. Now, a person who is a Tess apologist might say that we do see her also grow throughout the film in that the last scene of the beach wedding is what I meant to say. Yeah. The last scene of the beach wedding, she talks to the rich, cool boss who brings his dog to work, and she's a little bit more humble and she's more honest, right? And so that's one of the reasons why I think she's designed to be hated. Is because she's lying, right? And so she loves a chili cheese dog, but then she says she's a vegan. So that, to me, I think the character was meant to be that way. And again, I'm not being critical of the actor for taking the role. It's just I responded so poorly to that character. It's amazing.
Yeah, Tess was tough.
So maybe she did a fantastic job then.
I think she did. I really enjoyed her work in other things. So I think she did a really good job of not being the obvious Drusilla and what are Cinderella's stepsisters? They're horrible. And she wasn't that, but she was a little into herself. And then she gets an arc too over the course of the movie.
Yeah.
So This movie is packed with montages.
Oh, yeah.
The first one being when she's going back and forth from the two weddings. The
Mhm.
second one, we see George and Tess kind of hanging out together and some of the things that they're doing.
Right.
The third is the classic scene that was probably in every trailer when she's going through all of the bridesmaids' dresses, showing
classic.
them to Marsden. So it was chock full of montages.
And I really think that montage of the bridesmaids' dresses is critical. It's a pillar of the film because it's the title of the film, and that's kind of the conceit of how she and Marsden get together. And then, again, a little bit of a spoiler here, at the end of the movie to have 27 bridesmaids in those different dresses. And so a little shout out to our friend Dustin Morrow, because I wanted to point out that I did in fact count that all 27 dresses were there. And so it's not just time codes on video cameras, Dustin. I count everything. I'm obsessed with this kind of thing. It's like train spotting, I guess.
Yeah. There's a great scene in the bar where they sing Elton John's Benny and the Jets. Her and Marsden end up at a bar wet, kind of tossing back a tall one. And it's a fun scene. I like that one.
Yeah, so if you have attractive actors, try to find a way to put them in a downpour so you can get the wet t-shirt contest for free, right? If you just tell them we want you to expose yourself, they get a little testy, but if you say it's because you get caught in a rainstorm, you can get away with it, right?
Right.
So I don't know how realistic that is. I'm not really a bar fly, but I think in general, attractive blondes can get up on the bar and dance. No one's going to say no, but it seemed like that bar patronage, all of the people there were really quite talented musically, which again is a little bit of a callback to Crazy Ex-Girlfriend, where we have a musical number. So I enjoyed that.
Yeah. The whole bar gets involved too, so it really creates the whole number kind of piece.
Maybe I like going to bars more if they all broke out in song.
I just discovered in my notes that there's a fourth montage when Tess and George have gone out on a date and Jane is back at her apartment trying to occupy herself waiting for her sister to come back.
Yeah,
so
I thought that was a good
there was
montage.
A fourth one.
Yeah, I had those 4.
Yeah. I don't know if this is a quote. I wrote, "You unleashed 20 years of oppressed rage in one night. It was entertaining, but I know, but it was wrong." That's a line from Judy Greer when Jane is getting her revenge and she makes a slideshow on their engagement party. And she just pretty much calls out her sister on every single one of the lies that she's been telling George in order to enamor him. And that's a line from Judy Greer. "You
Right.
unleashed 20 years of oppressed rage in one night. It was entertaining, but it was wrong."
So Judy Greer is comic gold in general, but in this case, I think we can see in her comic lines some of McKenna's humor that we also see in Crazy Ex-Girlfriend. Definitely got an ear for comedy. One of the lines I like that Judy delivered was, "What good is it being appreciated if no one is naked?" That's a good one, right? She's, of course, supposed to be kind of a bit of the comic foil to this, but she also serves this role of being irresponsible. And so we see this, again, part of the not saying no arc is Jane feels that she has to be responsible. She has to take care of her father and her sister. And so that comes up in her relationship with Tess. Tess is the irresponsible version of Jane. But so we get a little bit of a foreshadowing of that with Judy Greer's character, who is also irresponsible. I thought it was kind of cleverly done that after that one wedding, Judy Greer's character, she shows up in a tuxedo shirt, which is a subtle way of saying she spent, the night at least, with one of the groomsmen and they took all their clothes off and she picked up the wrong clothes when she was leaving. But she accessorizes it such that it doesn't come out as like a walk of shame kind of trampy look, but it's just kind of a subtle clue that this is kind of who she is, right? She's got some skills at going home with people and then coming to work the next day.
Yeah. So you mentioned that there's kind of a clumsy or like an awkward male gaze, but then isn't there one later in the car as they're driving and he figures out that he's kind of falling for her?
Yeah, it's after the hour mark. I have it in my notes.
We overhear her tell, I think, George her favorite part of the wedding. And then later when they're sitting at the bar and he tells her his favorite part of a wedding and it's the same thing. So that's when the audience, at least if we didn't already know it, we decide like, oh, these two should be together.
Right. And to a certain extent, he's suffering from the opposite problem that he is incapable of saying yes. So he has been covering these weddings, but he can't say yes to romance itself, right? But I did make a note of that they both share the habit of looking at the groom when the bride first comes down the aisle. And that's good writing, but it's also good characters, right? It shows that they are fundamentally both romantics.
Yes. Even though he definitely doesn't want to admit that he is.
Yeah, and Jane has this good line, "Are you a cynic who knows how to spin romantic crap for girls like me?" And we see him over the course of the film. In his career, he's kind of parlayed this, and he kind of the conceit of why he's spending time with Jane is he's doing an article on her without her knowledge. And then you see him begin to question that. And so I thought that was kind of subtly subversive from McKenna in that we see that even like 20 years ago, the journalists were soulless and they would do anything for the story. And then all of a sudden, he's the one guy there at the New York Journal or whatever the made up magazine or newspaper was, the one guy who's like, oh, maybe we shouldn't do this to this poor woman. And so his boss is like, nah, of course you should, right? So I thought that was a delightfully subversive little message.
Yeah.
There's some fun, just basic camera technique stuff that I like. There's a good scene early in the film of Jane and Kevin in the taxi with the giant floral arrangement between them. So it was almost like a 3-shot instead of the 2-shot.
I was just going to say that what I liked about that scene is it creates this barrier between them.
Mm-hmm.
And so in the cab, the flowers, like there's something between them. It's their differences, just like the dresses in the closet, you know, kind of.
The dress is physically between Jane and Kevin. Katherine Heigl, when they shot her in Jane's apartment, they have her sitting, and if you'll notice the wainscoting on the wall forms a leading line directly to her eyes. That is clever camera.
You always notice that stuff, and that is lost on me always.
Also, when Jane and Tess have breakfast with their dad, they have really gorgeous catch lights, which we've already covered in previous films. And there's a hair light on Tess during the proposal. And the thing I liked about the proposal, a little bit of writing too, because there's a line in there where Jane comes in first and everybody starts doing stuff and then they start yelling, she's not the one, she's not the one. I thought that was really on the nose.
Yeah.
But there's a gorgeous hair light on Tess, but Jane is framed between George and the Will You Marry Me banner. So I thought from that perspective of the way they composed the shots, there was some really good work there.
Yep. I noticed in costuming and even the sets that there was a lot of red and yellow.
Mm-hmm.
There was yellow in a lot of the wedding flowers. His office is red and yellow. And I also made a note that there's no way she could have afforded that apartment.
Oh, that apartment was huge. And look at the closet for the wedding,
Yes.
bridesmaids' dresses. Why would you put a closet that big there and have double doors on it? I mean, it doesn't really make much sense.
Right.
But this is all movies when they live in New York. They have ridiculously huge apartments.
Yeah, it's just classic. I also wrote down for the costuming that I noticed she wore black the day after the article runs in the paper about her. And for the most part, she was always in very beautiful, like florals and bright cherry colors. But the day after she's humiliated, I don't think it was an accident that she was in an all black dress.
No, clever. I didn't catch that. Getting back to your previous, I think Malin Ackerman wears a lot of yellow as Tess.
Yeah, I don't know if they were playing off her blonde hair, but
That's what I assumed.
yeah.
So also speaking, though, about costuming, I don't know if this falls in the category of couldn't be made today, but I did notice that one of the bridesmaids' dresses was this very antebellum Gone with the Wind outfit. And I wondered if we were making that from scratch today, if we would feel comfortable doing that.
I don't think so. I think there were a number of the dresses. I mean, I think she did have like a very Asian inspired, but I believe it was an Asian wedding, much like the Indian sari she was in an Indian wedding. So that one maybe could fly. But yeah, I definitely don't think we would see an antebellum style wedding and if this were remade today. And I'm fine with that.
Right. Yeah, I don't know that we necessarily going to miss the petticoats, but it was a thing that stood out to me.
And speaking of all her dresses, the wardrobe department reported that their initial designs for the dresses all looked too good on Heigl because of her figure. And so they were hard pressed to design bridesmaids' dresses that would look bad on her. So that's probably why they had to kind of dig deep in the barrel for, just ridiculous over the top.
Correctly, there was one in there where it was cross-dressing, where she wore a tux, and there was another that looked a lot like S&M kind of gear, which again, funny kind of sight gag. But when you stop and imagine, I think McKenna probably had a list that she wrote down of hideous bridesmaids dress ideas, and they picked the 27 best. So that would be curious on the extras if they told us what were the ones that didn't make the cut.
Yeah, I'd love to know what the budget for just the 27 dresses were.
Okay, we should totally ask Miriam to put a bid together. What would it take you to make 27 hideous bridesmaids dresses?
And it's funny too, because we're not, full disclosure, we're not the biggest, I shouldn't speak for you, but I was turned off of Katherine Heigl when she accepted, I believe it was a Emmy maybe, and she kind of annoyingly corrected the pronunciation of her last name. Now, I'm not precious with names. I have like one of those names that is the most popular of the 70s and 80s, and it can be spelled, a couple dozen ways. So
No.
maybe that's it, but I'm just like, just take your award and be humble.
Not to correct you, but Dodge is really only spelled one way.
No, first name.
Oh, right. Yeah, I also remember that incident, and I'm going to be honest, I'm not sure her career has really taken off since that point, so maybe other people remember it.
But I love this movie.
This movie is great. I think it's her best work, actually. Generally, I say that romantic comedies, like Billy Murnett said, live and die on the female lead. In this film, she must obviously have landed that role very well, because I think this is a really good rom-com, and it works, and she's the lead.
She is. Right, so we've got some head trauma. At 18 and a half minutes, Judy Greer slaps Jane.
Yeah, slaps her hard.
Yeah. So that's fun.
Yeah.
Oh, and I have at a minute 13 in, Jane slaps, it must be an hour 13.
Hour 13,
That has to be an
yeah.
hour 13.
Yeah.
Jane slaps Kevin.
Yeah, she does.
And then she's tackled in the beginning, so there maybe was some head trauma there.
Right, some tackling. That's good.
And then we have lots of smoochies.
Smoochy, smoochy, smoochy.
Let's see, hour 10.
Hour 10 at the end of the Benny and the Jets number is the first smoochy between Kevin and Jane that I have.
But then I have that Ed Burns kisses Jane at 1:34, 1:35. Oh no, that has to all be her with Kevin.
It might be possible that it's a kind of chaste kiss.
But then, so I have a lot of smoochies listed here for Kevin and Jane.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's a kiss at the very end when they get married at 1:43.
Marriage.
So there's lots of nice smoochies in this film.
Right.
Shall we go to the numbers?
Sure.
Let's see. This movie cost a lot. It was probably all those dresses. It was $30 million, but maybe it was
Whoa.
the cast too.
Whoa.
Because we did have a good cast with, like, there was Melora Hardin played
Right.
Kevin's boss, Kristen Ritter, although she probably wouldn't pull a lot then. But Ed Burns probably would have pulled a lot. And maybe the locations, it was filmed in and around New York City and Rhode Island. Maybe that increased the cost a bit. It was listed as a romantic comedy rated PG-13, just shy of 2 hours at 151. Oh, I left out. It did quite well though, because it made almost 163 million. So
Yeah, I think
made up for all those dresses.
I think of the modern crop, this is one of the better romantic comedies.
Yeah, and we paused it 4 times. So one to talk about all the casts, one because you gave me an interesting IMDb fact, and then a lot to talk about Tess and her character. And then we talked plot. So this is a high pause count.
Okay, so I think I'm duty bound to cast Malin Ackerman in something at some point in my career just to make up for the hate I have for the character of Tess.
We'll have to watch another Malin Ackerman film to see if it spills over.
Well, she did great in that one where she's a boxer being trained by Alec Baldwin.
Yeah.
It's called Chick Fight, Girl Fight,
Yeah,
something like that.
something like that.
Yeah.
I think it's on Apple TV. It's good. You guys should check it out. Hey, what about a driving review?
There was not a lot of driving in this film, but it was a key plot point. She drives an 86 Volvo 240 sedan, and at a certain key point in the film, her ambition exceeds her adhesion. And they leave the roadway and go for a little off-roading. And I don't know how Volvos are made, but I can't explain how putting the passenger seat back deploys the horn. That one was a little confusing to me, but made for a funny gag. So, yeah, she doesn't drive the Volvo very well. My guess is that she panic braked and oversteered, and that's why they went off the road. So,
Didn't she hydroplane?
they talked about hydroplaning, but I'll be honest, looking at how the car was moving, that's not kind of what I would have said. So the dialogue was there, but I think the stunt department was a little hesitant to really start throwing people around. But maybe I'm being overly critical. Maybe Jane goes full send into that turn, and I should respect her for it.
Maybe. All right. So that's it for 27 Dresses. Let us know what you think. Like I said, this is a controversial one. I mean, you think you're signing up for a little rom-com and you get, pause 4 times to talk about character development and plot. So check it out. Let us know what you think. Please leave us questions or comments. You can give us a call and leave a message and we might play it on air. 971-245-4148. You can reach us and leave a message and maybe we'll even play it on air. You could hear your voice. It's exciting. Another thing to look out for is on our social media. We're going to start putting up some t-shirt ideas. We've gotten a request to maybe make some merch with some of our common features in the website. So look for that and give a vote of what t-shirt, if you were to buy a t-shirt from the podcast, what would it be? So remember,
Dodges never stop and neither do the movies.
Thanks for listening to Dodge Movie Podcast with Christy and Mike Dodge of Dodge Media Productions. To find out more about this podcast and what we do, go to dodgemediaproductions.com. Subscribe, share, leave a comment, and tell us what we should watch next. Dodges never stop, and neither do the movies.